Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin. Happy week 14, Familia. It is playoff push, playoff push, playoff push. Ay, Dios mío. You know, I've got a couple of playoff spots that are pretty secure, that are almost secure. I got a win and in scenario. I've got there's no way you're in. I've got, hey, forget about it. You've had too many injuries. Olvídate. I won't talk about that with NFL Fantasy in Español. that was a rough season on there, but Familia, it's the playoff push, and you know what? It's not going to be an easy one, Familia. I am not going to, sugarcoat it in any way, shape, or form. There are 6 teams on bye. This is Bye-Mageddon 2.0. It's you've got Atlanta, you've got Chicago, you've got Green Bay, you've got Indianapolis, New Orleans, Washington. They're all on bye this week, Familia. So it's not going to be easy. You're going to have some players, if you've got Jonathan Taylor, if you've been counting on Terry McLaurin, if you've been, if you've been counting on, Justin Fields, Christian Watson has been riding. You've been riding him. You got to sit those guys. Not easy. I've got one league where I actually have to drop a player so that I can field the starting lineup because the whole bottom of my roster is just, it's bye. It's that 98, in that in sync or 98 degrees, whichever boy group from the 90s it is, but it doesn't matter. Bye-Mageddon does not care. It's your playoff push. Also, make sure we're on YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe, por favor. Please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And also, make sure you go into fantasypoints.com. Use that promo code 22familia10, 22familia10. If you're doing it in Spanish, you get the best of the best. You get so much great fantasy content that's going to help you in your playoff push. John Hanson, Joe Dolan, Graham Barfield, Scott Barrett, Tom Brawley, Wes Huber, just the best of the best minds, Familia. All friends of the show. Just love love being able to access that great knowledge. Again, get 10% off the already reduced price. So let's jump right into it, Familia. It is just a lot of players that we're going to be talking about today. And you know what? We are going to start off with the quarterbacks. And you know what? It's a repeat performance. Mike White from last week. He's rostered in 18% of leagues. He just threw for 369 yards, Familia. He almost had a touchdown to Garrett Wilson that would have just made the afternoon, would have helped my DK DraftKings lineup, so that's okay. He's got a bona fide wide receiver stud there. You got Buffalo that's allowing only 235.9 yards per game. They're playing them this week. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be a game where they're going to have to pass to get anything going. So, Mike White is an option this week if you're sitting a quarterback. Tyler Huntley, Lamar Jackson is hurt, Family. Tyler Huntley is rostered in only 1% of leagues. He came in in relief last week, threw for 187 yards, rushed for 41 yards. So you know what? It's going to be a little while for Lamar Jackson. Also, let's keep in mind that he had a big game last year where he threw for 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, ran for 73 yards, and another pair of touchdowns. So there is the possibility that Tyler Huntley could do that for you in a given week. And I would predict that it's going to be multiple weeks with that knee injury. They're not going to want to take any chances with Lamar Jackson rushing him back too soon. So, Tyler Huntley is a streaming option this week. A little bit deeper down, Brock Purdy, 1%. The other Purdy quarterback with the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy G, lo siento mucho, get better, get healed with that foot injury. You know what? The thing with Purdy, he has great weapons. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield, George Kittle as a tight end. These guys all get plenty of yak, so there is the possibility for him to do that. He threw for 210 yards with 2 touchdowns last week against Miami, a pretty good defense. So this week he's got Tampa Bay, another pretty good defense. They gave up 210 yards to Jacoby Brissett. Geno Smith took him for 275 yards and 2 touchdowns. Purdy is not in that realm, but you know what? If you need an emergency, it's a home game for him, so he's going to have the home crowd behind him. He's a possibility as a streaming option for you. All right, we're going to go over to the running backs. And Familia, I don't understand how Zonovan Knight is still out there. He's on 47. He's only rostered in 47% of leagues, Familia. So you know what? I look at him and you know what? I mean, he got 118 yards from scrimmage last week. That's 20 total touches. James Robinson only had 4. You know, you had Ty Johnson, who ran 26 routes last week. Knight ran 25. Robinson ran 0. This is really he had great bursts there. I mean, there were just a couple of times I watched that game closely. There were a couple of times where he was really coming in, and he had, you know, he just had great speed out of the backfield. I think he's a possibility. Buffalo is a tough one. Because he is a bit of a dual threat. You had Ramondre Stevenson, who just took them for 74 yards last week, them being the Bills. So possibility. But the cover boy of this week, James Cook, you're cooking with him. He cooked last week. He had 20 touches, 105 total yards. He had 6 receptions in there. His snap count was 33. Devin Singletary was at 32. He did. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. He did have 18 total yards on Thanksgiving Day. The previous game, he had 86 yards. So the Jets held him to just 33 yards on 6 touches in week 9. But you know what? It really looks like he's becoming more and more a part of this offense. And I mean, in week 14, I'm looking at him as a possibility. I'm starting him in a couple leagues, in at least one league. 24% currently owned in Yahoo leagues, going up against the Jets. I think who are allowing 134.3 scrimmage yards, since week 9. So I'm looking at, the possibility of getting some play out of the backfield. Es posible. Sí se puede with him. All right, Cam Akers over on the Rams. I don't understand that one either. But you know what? He had 17 carries last week, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns. You know what? He was on the field for 46 of 64 snaps. He ran 19 routes to 11 by Kyron Williams, who was expected to be more of like that satellite back, that catching passes out of the backfield. Akers had 17 of the 27 rush attempts. This is really looking like the Rams are trying to see what they have in Akers in case they want to either trade him, cut him, or give him some backfield carries. Remember, they don't have a first-round draft pick. They're going to be needing some offensive line help. So, maybe instead of going for a running back in the second round, maybe they use a second-round pick on offensive linemen, spend some money in free agency. This is all what is looking ahead. So they need to know if Akers could be a guy who sticks around. Last running back, Jerick McKinnon. He vultured a touchdown last week, not on the ground, but in the passing game. He got 60 total scrimmage yards last week on 10 touches. So he's had between 7 and 10 touches in all but one of the last 5 games. Isaiah Pacheco, he is getting the full workload on the, as far as rushing, but McKinnon is getting in some work. So he's a flex option in deeper leagues. Denver, gave up 113 yards to Dante Foreman in week 12. Josh Jacobs in week 11 took them for 160 scrimmage yards. So they are giving up some yardage to the running backs. McKinnon is a possibility. Okay, a few wide receivers to talk about real quick. Nico Collins, rostered at 29%. He's got 7 to 10 targets in each of the last 4 games, but he's no more than 49 receiving yards. So you have to temper your enthusiasm. But the thing with him, Brandon Cooks was inactive last week, so maybe they're phasing him out of the offense a little bit and looking to trade him, release him. You never know. But this is also a game. Let's look at the game script. The Cowboys are likely going to win in a blowout in this game. It's a home game for, this game is in Big D. So the Texans are going to have to pass to try and catch up. Nico Collins, their top target. He's someone to look at. DJ Chark. He only saw 6 targets last week, but he turned them into 5 receptions for 98 yards. He ran 41 routes last week, which led the Lions. It's his 3rd healthy game coming back from injury. The Vikings just gave up those 369 yards that I mentioned earlier to Mike White. They're allowing 209 receiving yards to the wide receiver. Garrett Wilson just took him for 162 yards by himself. So Chark, you know what? If you need a desperation play, a guy who's going to go and maybe get deep on there, yeah, something to think about. Remember, Jameson Williams only ran 2 routes last week, so they're really taking their time phasing him in, which they should. The kid is only 10 months from surgery, so 11 months from surgery. Okay, a couple more receivers. Demarcus Robinson, rostered in 12% of leagues. He had 8 targets last week, only turned it into 41 receiving yards on 7 receptions, but he has 8+ targets in 3 of his last 5 games. He's playing the Steelers. They gave up 95 receiving yards to Drake London last week, gave up 61 yards and a touchdown to Michael Pittman the week before. So, you know what? It could be something that, again, in a 14-team league or greater, deep leagues with a lot of flexes, and the last one that I'm going to talk about, the last receiver, Marvin Jones, again, another desperation play. He's only in 12% of leagues. I'm looking at him in one of my leagues in the league where I told you I've got all buys on there, and I've actually got to drop someone from my who I don't want to drop, but they're on a buy this week, so I gotta go for it. He's only got 3 or 4 targets in 3 of his game in the last 3 games, but he did catch the game-winning TD in week 12. So Trevor Lawrence does look at him in crucial situations. He's got a high of 104 yards on 7 receptions in week 5. Tennessee has allowed 3 100-yard receivers in the last 2 games. That's AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and T. Higgins, and they totaled 4 TDs. So you know what? If you need a punt play that could catch a touchdown, Marvin Jones is one of them. I'm going to go into 3 tight ends real quickly. Greg Dulcich is one of them. Last week he turned 8 targets into 6 catches for 85 yards. Now you've got Cortland Sutton possibly missing time, so there's going to be some passes that are available. And really it's just Jerry Jeudy and Greg Dulcich that are going to be catching passes. So the game script is going to call for it because they got Kansas City. It's a game in Denver, but Kansas City is going to come in. They're going to be coming off of that tough loss. They're going to be looking to pass the ball, and so they're going to be looking to run up a big number on there. So Denver, as tough as it is for them to score lately, but you know what? They're going to have to look to pass to try and keep up. Evan Ingram, I had a cute little back and forth with amiga of the show, Steffi Smalls, talking about Evan Ingram because her being a Giants fan, and now I know Ingram is with the Jaguars, but you know what? Then he went and caught a touchdown. He ran 32 routes last week, which was almost as much as Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. It was his most targets since week 8. So is this a trend? Possible. You got Hayden Hurst, who took Tennessee for 57 yards on 6 receptions for Cincinnati. The Titans are allowing 324 passing yards per game. They just they're about to replace their GM. They just I just saw right before this that they announced that they were firing John Robinson. So maybe there's a little bit of upheaval in Tennessee, even if they are even if they are in first place in the NFC South. But Evan Ingram, possibility. Last player I'm going to talk about, Daniel Bellinger. Salud on coming back from an ugly eye injury. He saw 5 targets, caught all of them for 24 yards. He ran 32 routes, which was number 3 on the team. It was his first game back from injuries. Now Philly is going to put up points. Jones is going to need anyone to throw it to. Right now, it's really just Darius Slayton and Saquon Barkley out of the backfield. Chig Okonkwo, he turned 4 catches for 68 yards last week in a negative game script. This is probably going to be another negative game script for the Giants. So make sure, he's a possibility. He's only rostered in 2% of leagues. So quick one, Familia. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, make sure if you're going to fantasypoints.com, use the promo code 22familia10 and get 10% off your subscription. Also, please make sure you're going to YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. Muchas gracias. I really appreciate it. And also get find my content at Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter. We're at FamiliaFFB.com. I'll be posting an article on this shortly where I'm embedding the video. So, otra vez, thank you so much. Oh, also thank you to Anchor for putting us on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts on the audio version. So again, go there. If you want to subscribe, it'll just pop up when it's done. So muchas gracias for joining us. And remember, todos somos familia. Salud.